Your Excellency, the last 2 years, you've profiled our country tremendously across the world. No wonder the statements which my brother here, PCS, has made are the sentiments that are not only prevailing in Kenya, but also out there. And that's how it should be. This forum is a point of reflection and introspection on, number one, what is our national interest? And that question we will ask for as long as Kenya exists. It's not a one-off thing that we define and that's it. We have to keep on asking, what is our national interest? And as the ministry has presented through this draft and the stakeholders who prepared this draft, our national interest lies in some of the most sacred and bedrock principles that are espoused in our Constitution, including, but not limited to, the inviolability of our country. And everywhere, every inch of Kenya, where the flag flies and where the national anthem is sung, that space called Kenya is inviolable. It is the embodiment of our pride and should be protected at all costs. But it's also about our values, which is the software that runs Kenya, our culture, and our aspirations. This, our national interest, is essential to our national survival. And therefore, this foreign policy is about the sustainability of our country in the decades and centuries to come. What is that will make Kenya survive in this very complex, competitive, and insecure world? Many decades when this generation might not be here, many centuries, obviously, when all of us will not be here. Is it not in making sure our country is stable as you continue to lead us, Your Excellency? Is it not in making sure that we protect the resources in our country, make them available to the majority of the citizens, fight corruption, and make sure that the national wealth is used to benefit the country, projecting ourselves and selling our image out there as a country which is good for investment, which is good for business, and which can attract the resources from outside this country to come and benefit our people? Those are the questions that this foreign policy review should help us answer. And therefore, I am very, very, very proud as a citizen of this country that we are reflecting on these things at a time like this, and at a time when we are witnessing many changes across the world, the stress around existing multilateral systems, the emergence of plural systems, as has been said here, and how do we harness all these divergent developments for the benefit of our country.
Why we thought that it's so important is because we want to be able to domesticate foreign policy. In the middle of this year, when the young men and women of Kenya were raising some concerns, they kept on asking this question: why does the president travel? Not looking at the end result, but why does he travel? It even migrated from why to the mode of travel. And in the process, critical aspects of what emerges out of proper engagement at the highest level was being lost in that conversation. So it is our desire that through this kind of interaction, under your leadership, Your Excellency, we can perhaps coin something that we might call foreign policy machinani, so that we can get the ordinary citizen, the young men and women of this country, to understand why it is important for a nation to engage with the globe. Try and imagine yourself living in a country with a dormant foreign policy. A nation that is like an introvert, does not interact with anybody, does not talk to anybody. What kind of nation would that be? So, as we look at what has happened, the reality is that the President of Kenya, in the 2.5 years or so since he took over, have dramatically reprofiled Kenya's image in the international arena. I can speak with confidence because I've made so many trips. And the question in some of these fora is that, and what does Kenya say? What does Kenya think? That is important. For you, some of you who are politicians here, you know how it feels when you are at a public rally and a particular speaker speaks, and then when he walks away and leaves the arena, and you find the audience disappearing with him. It happens. But Kenya is becoming a pivotal state, a reference center, a nation where people want to know and ask and seek guidance from. That does not come easy, neither does it come lightly. So through this kind of conversation, how do we anchor Kenya's foreign policy? Through this conversation, how do we support it? How do we make sure that the budgeting process of our nation properly supports the foreign policy initiatives, bearing in mind there are also competing interests in other sectors? These are issues that can only come through if we build sufficient consensus and be able to direct and know that what we are looking for has an impact on our people. So, Your Excellency, I was not setting you up, but I was just saying, they were asking, why do you travel? And that was a very telling statement. It meant that there's a communication gap that we need to fill as a nation, so that the bulk of our citizens can understand why international engagements, why meeting international obligations is important, both for our sovereignty, for our security, and for our economic well-being. So I will not say any more, because the President will, we are eagerly waiting to hear from you and to guide us so that the final documentation really captures the mood, the tone, the thought, the punch that you desire for this country.
The diaspora pillar has always been a pillar of the foreign policy of Kenya. But giving it flesh, giving it budget, and giving it energy has allowed us to do many things to grow our diplomacy. It has allowed us to protect the 4 million Kenyans who live abroad, has allowed us to run evacuation programs when those Kenyans have been in distress, such as in Sudan, Your Excellency, where we're the first country to get our citizens home, such as the ongoing evacuation out of Lebanon, where so far we have received 300 distressed Kenyans from Lebanon, and that process is ongoing. But also it has allowed us to extend protection through ensuring documentation is done for our diaspora everywhere, including running the Mobile Consular Services program that has allowed us to serve Kenyans in 175 different cities in the 2 years that we have been in business. Your Excellency, what does a well-done foreign policy do as far as diaspora remittances are concerned? It allows us to put money, programs, and people to create an incentive framework for remittances. And Your Excellency, I'm happy to announce that we see an upward trend as far as the remittances that come from this country. We last year reported $4.2 billion US, which, as you know, is higher than the remittance, the foreign exchange that comes from tea, coffee, tourism, and I'm not trying to start anything with the PSAs for tourism, for agriculture, and so on. But Your Excellency, that number is critical because it comes from less than 4 million people sending money in small ticket sizes to their homes. Your Excellency, it allows us to think about people who have been on the margins and how to keep them connected to their homeland. Countries that have supported their diasporas have done well. And we have examples everywhere, from Ireland, from Israel, from India, and so on, and we can see the work that has been done by those diasporas. Ensuring that our foreign policy has legs and has had diaspora diplomacy at its heart has ensured then that we've been able to keep our diaspora connected and help them achieve more and more of their rights. Your Excellency, I'm currently hosting a delegation from the diaspora who are here to meet with various members of Bunge to talk about electoral law reform and to see how they can take even more part in the work that we do. So, Your Excellency, this process of redoing the foreign policy of Kenya and doing it in such an open way that allows various stakeholders to speak to it will give us fresh impetus, will allow us to feel, touch this thing that is called diplomacy and this thing that is called the foreign policy.
60 years down the line, since the commencement of our diplomacy, we now have footprints in well over 68 geographies. You can see the spread is largely in Africa, 29, 15 in Europe, 6 in the Americas, 9 in Asia, 9 in the Middle East. I think in the Americas, actually, it's going to change in about 2 weeks because there's a 7th one coming up, which is a consulate we are setting up in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. But Your Excellency, this footprint has been put here for a reason. Because when you compare it with our neighbors, our footprint, given our ambition, is still inadequate. Now, our friends in South Africa have 103 missions abroad. With the kind of mandate you have given us, Your Excellency, including on diaspora affairs, including on candidature, it increasingly becomes evident to us that we do not have sufficient coverage. And so part of the conversation we need to have is whether the coverage that we have is sufficient. 2 days ago, Your Excellency, Prime Cabinet Secretary hosted a validation meeting in this very space. It is a meeting that brought together a wide range of Kenyans to reflect on the draft foreign policy of the Republic that we have been developing since July. Your Excellency, 12 consultative meetings have taken place with different sectors of our society, and based on their views, we now have a draft document that was validated under the leadership of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. And so today's meeting, Your Excellency, is really quite brief because the intention of it is to hear the vision of the #1 diplomat of the Republic of Kenya in the person of His Excellency, the President. Because that's who you are, sir. You are the embodiment of the Republic in its relations with states and multilateral organizations around the world. You are the voice of Kenya. You are the #1 marketer of the Republic. And therefore, it is important, Your Excellency, that we hear what your thoughts are before we finalize this policy. 2 days ago, Your Excellency, Prime Cabinet Secretary hosted a validation meeting in this very space. It is a meeting that brought together a wide range of Kenyans to reflect on the draft foreign policy of the Republic that we have been developing since July. Your Excellency, 12 consultative meetings have taken place with different sectors of our society, and based on their views, we now have a draft document that was validated under the leadership of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. And so today's meeting, Your Excellency, is really quite brief because the intention of it is to hear the vision of the #1 diplomat of the Republic of Kenya in the person of His Excellency, the President. Because that's who you are, sir. You are the embodiment of the Republic in its relations with states and multilateral organizations around the world. You are the voice of Kenya. You are the #1 marketer of the Republic. And therefore, it is important, Your Excellency, that we hear what your thoughts are before we finalize this policy.